Most people believe productivity is about managing time. Buy a better planner, download another app, wake up earlier. The assumption feels obvious because time is measurable. But human behavior rarely follows what is measurable. It follows what is emotionally significant. Two people can have the same 24 hours and produce completely different lives. The difference usually begins before the world has fully woken up. The first hour isn't simply another 60 minutes. It's the moment your brain quietly negotiates with your future self. Win that negotiation, and the rest of the day bends differently. Lose it, and you'll spend hours trying to recover from a psychological debt you never noticed. The day doesn't just happen. It starts by teaching your mind what kind of person you're about to become. The first decision is often the loudest identity statement. And once identity begins moving, behavior rarely stays still. But here's the strange part. Most people wait for motivation before taking meaningful action. Except reality behaves differently. Motivation often arrives after movement, not before it. Watch someone make their bed, answer one difficult email, or finish a 10-minute workout. None of these actions seem life-changing, yet something invisible begins building beneath them. Psychologists sometimes describe this as behavioral momentum, but in everyday life it feels much simpler. One completed action quietly argues for another. Progress becomes easier because the brain prefers continuing a story rather than starting a new one. That's why scrolling endlessly feels effortless too. Momentum doesn't care whether you're building a career or wasting an afternoon. Small actions don't stay small once the mind starts protecting consistency. And that creates another question. If momentum can work for us, why do so many people still struggle every day? Because the brain loves consistency even more than success. That sounds intelligent until you look closer. We often imagine consistency as discipline, but the brain experiences it as familiarity. Repeating the same behavior reduces mental effort, whether that behavior is writing every morning or checking social media every 5 minutes. This explains why dramatic life changes usually collapse while tiny habits quietly survive. People don't become productive because they suddenly become stronger. They become productive because repetition slowly becomes cheaper than resistance. The hidden reward isn't immediate achievement. It's reduced psychological friction. What repeats eventually stops asking for permission. Once behavior becomes automatic, attention is finally free for something much more valuable. But this creates another problem. Modern life constantly steals the very resource required for meaningful achievement. Not time, attention. Look around a coffee shop. A notification interrupts a sentence. A message breaks concentration. Someone opens 5 browser tabs before finishing one thought. None of these interruptions feel dramatic because each one is tiny. Yet together they produce a quiet epidemic. Deep work becomes emotionally uncomfortable. Sustained focus starts feeling unnatural. The mind begins craving interruption because interruption has become familiar. We mistake mental restlessness for personality when it's often just conditioning. A distracted mind eventually mistakes noise for normal. And once distraction feels normal, something even deeper begins to disappear. The ability to stay with difficulty. Real progress almost never announces itself with excitement. It usually arrives disguised as boredom. The writer staring at the same paragraph. The musician repeating one difficult measure. The entrepreneur solving one stubborn problem after another. From the outside, it looks repetitive. Inside the brain, something remarkable is happening. Every moment you resist the urge to escape discomfort, You're training attention to become more trustworthy than emotion. This is why extraordinary performers often look ordinary while they're working. They aren't constantly inspired. They're simply less willing to negotiate with every passing feeling. Mastery begins where emotional bargaining ends. And once that becomes part of your identity, achievement starts looking very different. So perhaps productivity has never been about squeezing more into a calendar. Perhaps achievement isn't created by managing hours at all. It's created by deciding which version of yourself gets repeated often enough to become believable. Every focused morning, every small completed task, every protected moment of concentration is casting a vote in an invisible election. Eventually, the votes become a personality, and personality becomes destiny. The people we call productive aren't winning against time. They're quietly teaching their own minds which future deserves to feel familiar. Most people think ambition is a personal journey. Your goals, your discipline, your decisions. It sounds convincing because success appears individual from a distance. But human behavior tells a different story. Nobody develops inside a vacuum. Every conversation leaves a trace. Every relationship quietly adjusts the emotional climate in which your decisions are made. Long before people influence your choices, they influence the energy behind those choices. You can leave a 5-minute conversation feeling capable enough to start building your future, or strangely exhausted without understanding why. The words may already be forgotten, but the emotional transfer remains. Motivation, anxiety, confidence, doubt. They move between people more easily than most of us realize. Emotions travel through relationships faster than ideas ever do. And once you recognize that invisible exchange, every relationship begins to look different. But here's the strange part. Emotional influence is rarely intentional. Very few people wake up planning to drain someone else's ambition. Except reality behaves differently. Human beings constantly synchronize with one another without noticing. Spend enough time around chronic stress, and your nervous system quietly adjusts to it. Stay close to someone who treats every opportunity like a threat, and risk slowly starts feeling irresponsible instead of exciting. The opposite is equally true. Calm people lend emotional stability. Curious people normalize exploration. Focused people make discipline feel ordinary. None of this requires advice. Presence alone becomes persuasive. People don't just share conversations. They share emotional operating systems. And that realization naturally leads to a more uncomfortable question. If relationships shape our internal world so powerfully, why do we evaluate them so superficially? Most people judge relationships by history, loyalty, or comfort. They ask whether someone is kind, funny, or familiar. They rarely ask a more revealing question: who do I become after spending time with this person? That's the real relationship audit. Not whether someone cares about you, but whether your repeated interactions consistently expand or shrink your psychological horizon. Some people leave you thinking bigger than yesterday. Others quietly train you to expect less from yourself. The difference isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's hidden inside recurring jokes, subtle skepticism, or endless conversations about problems without movement towards solutions. Every relationship is quietly rehearsing a future version of you. And once you notice the rehearsal, another conflict becomes impossible to ignore. Because growth changes social balance. That sounds obvious until you experience it yourself. We assume our closest relationships will naturally celebrate every step forward. But human psychology is more complicated. Every social group develops an unspoken emotional equilibrium. Everyone understands their role without discussing it. The dependable one, the funny one, the cautious one, the dreamer. When one person begins changing rapidly, the entire balance shifts. Suddenly, old expectations stop matching new behavior. Friends may call you different. Family may question your priorities. Not because they dislike your success, but because your transformation quietly challenges the stability everyone had learned to expect. Growth doesn't only change your life. It changes everyone else's expectations of your life. And that creates one of ambition's most difficult emotional tests. But this creates another problem. We often mistake encouragement for support. They sound similar, yet psychologically they are worlds apart. Encouragement is easy. It appears in compliments, enthusiastic words, and hopeful conversations. Genuine support is much rarer. It survives inconvenience. It respects boundaries. It accepts that meaningful goals require sacrifice, temporary absence, uncomfortable priorities, and sometimes disappointing other people. Someone who says, "I believe in you," may disappear the moment your ambition interrupts their expectations. Someone who truly supports you understands that growth often looks selfish before it looks successful. Real support protects your future, even when it inconveniences the present. That distinction changes how every relationship is understood. Perhaps the greatest influence on your future isn't the loudest voice around you, but the emotional atmosphere you repeatedly choose to live inside. Ambition isn't simply built through discipline, talent, or opportunity. It's sustained by the invisible exchange of energy between human beings who either normalize possibility or quietly negotiate it away. The people closest to you are never just witnesses to your future. They are helping teach your nervous system what kind of future feels emotionally acceptable. And in the end, that silent lesson shapes far more than any motivational speech ever could. Most people believe they lose time because life becomes busier. Careers expand, families grow, responsibilities multiply. It feels like the calendar is stealing the years. But human behavior reveals something far more unsettling. Time rarely speeds up on its own. What actually disappears is conscious attention. The less deliberately we experience our lives, the less memory the brain decides to preserve. Days begin blending together. Weeks become invisible. Suddenly you're wondering how 5 years vanished when each individual day seemed almost insignificant. The clock never accelerated. Awareness quietly slowed down. Time doesn't disappear first. Attention does. And once attention begins fading, something even more dangerous quietly takes its place. But here's the strange part. Life almost never changes direction through dramatic decisions, except reality behaves differently. Most futures are built through invisible drift, tiny postponements, small compromises, one skipped opportunity, one delayed conversation. One habit repeated because it feels easier today than changing it tomorrow. None of these moments feel important while they're happening. That's exactly why they're so powerful. Human beings are remarkably good at detecting sudden change, yet surprisingly blind to gradual movement. Imagine a ship drifting just 1 degree off course. For hours, nothing appears wrong. But weeks later, it reaches an entirely different destination. Human lives behave the same way. The most dangerous direction is the one that changes too slowly to notice. And once drift becomes normal, the future starts writing itself without asking permission. That sounds dramatic until you look closer. Think about how often people promise themselves they'll start after things settle down. After the promotion, after the move, after summer, after the holidays. The brain treats the future like an endless warehouse of opportunity, always assuming there will be another perfect moment waiting just ahead. But psychologically, tomorrow has a remarkable advantage over today. It carries no emotional cost because it doesn't exist yet. Today demands effort. Tomorrow only demands imagination. That's why procrastination rarely feels irresponsible in the moment. It feels reasonable. The future is where the mind stores every difficult decision it hopes to avoid. But eventually, postponed intentions begin transforming into something much heavier. Regret rarely arrives because of one catastrophic mistake. More often, it grows quietly through accumulated neglect. People imagine they'll regret failures, but later in life, many discover something unexpected. They remember the conversations they never had, the risks they never took, the places they never explored, the versions of themselves they never allowed to exist because comfort always seemed more practical than uncertainty. Human memory has a curious habit. It softens the pain of failure while sharpening the outline of unrealized possibility. The opportunities left untouched continue evolving inside the imagination, becoming more meaningful with every passing year. Failure has an ending. Untested potential keeps rewriting itself forever, and that realization changes the way we think about the present. But this creates another problem. Most people evaluate their lives using external milestones because they're easy to measure. Income, titles, possessions, achievements. Yet the questions that matter most rarely appear on any resume. Have your daily choices become closer to your values or farther away? Do your routines reflect your priorities or merely your obligations? Are you intentionally building a life or simply maintaining one? These questions feel uncomfortable because they remove every convenient excuse. They force attention away from what life has given you and toward what you've been repeatedly choosing. A meaningful life is rarely lost in one decision. It's negotiated in thousands of ordinary ones. And perhaps that's the only audit that truly matters. So maybe the greatest illusion about time is believing there's always enough of it. The real measure of a life isn't the number of years that pass, but how many moments were lived deliberately enough to become part of who you are. Every unnoticed drift, every conscious correction, every choice to pay attention instead of simply passing through another day is quietly deciding what your future memories will contain. In the end, life isn't asking how much time you were given. It's asking how much of yourself was actually present while time was passing. Most people imagine transformation as a single defining moment, a breakthrough, a life-changing decision, a dramatic turning point that separates the old self from the new. It makes for a satisfying story because stories prefer clear beginnings and endings. Human behavior rarely does. Real transformation is usually much quieter. It begins long before anyone else notices, before new habits appear, before confidence becomes visible, before success leaves any evidence. It starts with a subtle psychological shift. The moment your current identity becomes more uncomfortable than the uncertainty of becoming someone else. That's the point most people misunderstand. Change doesn't begin when opportunity arrives. It begins when the old version of you stops feeling believable. Every new identity is born from the moment the old one can no longer explain your future. And once that inner tension appears, remaining the same becomes surprisingly difficult. But here's the strange part. We often assume successful people discover who they truly are, except reality behaves differently. The most adaptable people rarely spend their lives protecting a fixed identity. They repeatedly outgrow it. Every stage of growth asks them to release a version of themselves that once felt permanent. The student becomes the teacher. The beginner becomes the expert. The expert eventually becomes the learner again. From the outside, it looks like confidence. Inside, it feels like continuous reconstruction. They don't ask, "Who am I?" nearly as often as they ask, "Who does this next chapter require me to become?" The strongest identity is the one that can survive being replaced. And that realization leads to the most uncomfortable stage of transformation. Because every reinvention eventually reaches a psychological border. A moment where thinking is no longer enough. Reading another book won't help. Watching another documentary won't help. Planning one more perfect strategy won't help. There comes a point where the only remaining ingredient is action. Not because action guarantees success, but because uncertainty cannot be solved intellectually forever. Human beings often call this courage, but courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the willingness to let behavior move before certainty arrives. That single step feels impossibly large because the brain interprets unfamiliar action as potential danger, even when the real danger is standing still. Courage begins where prediction ends. And once that threshold is crossed, something unexpected starts happening. The person taking the action begins changing faster than the action itself. That sounds impossible until you look closer. Every meaningful decision leaves two results. One changes the world around you. The other changes the story your mind tells about who you are. Apply for the opportunity, and regardless of the outcome, you've become someone willing to try. Speak honestly, and regardless of the response, you've become someone capable of difficult conversations. Build the project, start the business, learn the skill, move to the new place. Each action quietly rewrites identity through evidence rather than imagination. Confidence doesn't appear first. It accumulates afterward. Behavior writes beliefs more reliably than beliefs write behavior. And once identity begins evolving through repeated evidence, transformation stops feeling temporary. But this creates another question. If you're constantly becoming someone new, what part of you actually remains? We spend enormous energy protecting achievements, reputations, and personal histories. Yet time eventually reshapes all of them. Careers end, trends disappear, recognition fades. The deeper question isn't whether people will remember your name. It's whether your existence permanently improved the lives that intersected with yours. Every conversation, every act of integrity, every idea shared, every person encouraged becomes part of a chain of influence extending beyond your own lifetime. Legacy is rarely built through extraordinary moments alone. More often, it grows from ordinary moments repeated with extraordinary consistency. The longest shadow you cast is often one you'll never live to see. Perhaps personal transformation has never been about becoming a better version of yourself. Perhaps it's about becoming someone whose influence continues growing even after your own story reaches its final page. Reinvention keeps your life moving. Courage changes your direction. Identity evolves through action. But legacy answers the only question time never stops asking. When everything temporary has fallen away, your titles, your successes, your failures, even your memories inside the minds of others, What remains is the pattern of change you left behind in people. In the end, the most complete transformation is not becoming unforgettable. It's becoming the reason someone else discovers a future they once believed was impossible. If this journey changed the way you see yourself, then it has already done its job. Thank you for spending your time with Relaxing Facts Studio. If you're not already subscribed, join us for more deep explorations into human behavior, psychology, and the hidden patterns shaping everyday life. If you found this episode meaningful, please like the video and share it with your friends and on your social media pages so more people can discover it. I'd also love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment with your biggest insight. Your support is what keeps this channel growing, improving, and creating more documentaries like this.